So welcome to Beyond Marketing, the podcast. I'm Maira Genovese. I'm the founder and CEO of MG Empower, a global integrated market agency. Today's guest is someone who lives at the intersection of fashion, culture, and technology. Steve Dool.
Dool, yeah.
Yes,
yeah, we got it.
Is the Senior Director of Brand Marketing at Depop, where he leads the charge in shaping how a new generation discovers, shops, and defines style. He brings a unique lens on creativity, community, and what it means to build culturally driven brands today. So welcome to the Beyond Marketing, the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on a very sunny, warm day in London, finally, to the podcast. So I really much appreciate that.
Thank you.
So before we started, tell me about you.
What do you want to know?
I want to know everything about Steve. It's just like, tell me about you're from London, how you end up at Depop, your career journey. I love to hear about people's stories before getting to career and marketing and all this stuff.
Yeah. I'm from New York originally.
Okay.
Been in London for about 8 years now. So it feels like a second home, at least. We can say New York is always home. Never forget. But yeah, I started out doing, after school in New York doing public relations, which was kind of a job that I fell into based on an internship I had back in Boston where I went to school.
Okay.
Did that for a few years. I think I was pretty good at it, to be honest with you. But I didn't feel like it was exactly, my calling. Especially in those days too, I was working at different agencies and I did things like crisis communication, which was fairly intense and could be very intense. But it gave that foundation of those transferable skills that are just pertinent to probably most industries, but definitely to marketing. And I'm really grateful for that. And I think about that in some ways as the stuff that I enjoyed the most. The clear storytelling, the working on a deadline, how do we keep cool in a moment of pressure, all of those sorts of things. And so kind of flipped that into more of the cultural side of PR. So I did a lot of fashion PR. I worked for this consultancy in New York that was the longest stretch of my time in New York, where it was a fashion wholesale showroom, and then they also had a PR and marketing team, and I kind of eventually led that team for a bit. But I started to kind of write on the side a little bit freelance. I studied journalism undergrad, and I kind of always wanted to get back to that. And eventually I just started getting more and more work on that side. There's a certain conflict of interest in some ways of representing some brands and writing about others. It limited what I could actually ethically talk about. And I just made the decision eventually, I really loved this. And if I wanted to actually do it, I had to jump in head first. And so left that to go freelance as a writer and editor, which was scary to a degree, living in New York and trying to be financially independent. But it ended up working out really well. I was really lucky to write for publications like the New York Times and CNN and GQ and stuff that, work kind of begot more work. And took a job eventually as the style editor at Complex magazine in New York.
Yeah, amazing.
Which was great. It was the end of their print era and really the beginning of when they were really pushing all their resources to online and video. So kind of rode that out for a bit, and then just really felt like I wanted to shake things up. And I went freelance again, mostly because I just wanted to write about different things that Complex wasn't really covering. And in that time also was getting some consulting work in branding and marketing, more specifically, mostly still within fashion. And it was good. It was all word of mouth from connections that I had built. But I felt like to take that to the next sort of level, I needed to have some kind of credibility. And also wanted to try something new. So I had come to London a lot growing up. My dad and mom lived here for a little while. And so I just decided this is a good time. I went to grad school here.
So you went to school here.
Yeah, okay. I went to the London School of Economics to study marketing, which was the first year they had that master's program. There's good and bad about any kind of thing.
So true.
I think marketing especially, it's good. What it did basically was it allowed me to speak the language of marketing, which I didn't necessarily have that formal training in.
Yeah.
But you're going to learn everything you need to know on the job. And there isn't really a replacement for that. There was some stuff that I never would have even thought about before. I took a class in pricing strategy. I don't have to use that every day, thankfully. But I never would have had any of that kind of
if you have
insight.
wanted the scope. Yeah.
And it also allowed me to be here and then stay here and look for a job here, because I was legally allowed to on the visa that I had. And I kind of found Depop from a friend of a friend who was doing some consulting for them in New York with a team there. And they had a role. Initially, it was called community partnerships, but it was essentially influencer marketing. So I was brought in to kind of build out that strategy, which is something that I had worked in a little bit through PR and then also covered quite extensively, because at the time that I was writing about fashion, it was kind of the influencer boom, where people were starting with things about like, how do we disclose that something is a gift or that you're being paid to promote this brand? So I felt like I felt confident enough that I kind of had the lay of the land.
That you could handle that.
Yeah, and then from there, it kind of grew. We launched brand partnerships as kind of an outgrowth of that. And then eventually I took over the brand team, and then we merged brand and marketing and threw in PR and comms back into the mix again, some social media. So it's all kind of, all the different parts of the career have come together here.
It just happened. Just like interesting point that you said about like influencer, that's actually was the role that you're going to Depop, but you're already having some experience that back in the days in fashion where brands didn't know. Just wanted to touch in that point to start with.
Yeah.
You saw the evolution of influencer, right? Because if you're working in fashion magazines before and PR, because PR before was PR articles, editorials, so you're not talking about too much engaging with influence. And then back in the days, especially when we started MG 12 years ago, there was a kind of like a tension between, fashion editors versus influencers, and how to give, for example, influencers first role in a fashion show.
Sure.
How do you, like, based on, your experience going to being a writer and PR and then going to Depop to actually lead that influencer.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the evolution and how did you kind of, transition to that, and where do you see influencer today?
Yeah, I mean, it was a journey and an evolution, as you said. I think there was also this idea of a real separation of church and state between what is organic editorial coverage that you kind of earn through relationship building and through doing good work, and then what's paid for. That's all merged already. Like, so many things are essentially sponsored content on the editorial side because the advertising money isn't the same as what it used to be. On the flip side, I think there was a definite culture forever of this sort of, I know it's kind of become a buzzword, but this like gatekeeping mentality of like, we're the decision makers and we're the ones who are influential, and keeping other people out of it a little bit. I think anyone who has any kind of sense of what actually moves the needle these days or where people's attention are, they understand that idea of gatekeeping has been completely,
it's been completely,
completely burst open. So I think that then led to some, I think, very kind of cynical ways of working with influencers, where it's like, okay, we'll just pay them to do some posts then, or we'll invite them to like an Instagram takeover at our runway show, and that's like fine. You know what I mean? It does whatever it does.
Yeah.
But I think the idea that just it's not top down anymore in terms of influence and things that are driving culture. It's oftentimes very much bottom up, and there's still a little bit of people who are. There's a little bit of a sense that there are people in fashion who are really interesting creative directors who are able to kind of move things forward. But in order for it to really take hold, it needs to have a cosign from the people underneath. Everyone is a content creator.
Everyone is a content creator.
Even the content creators don't always have control over what hits and what doesn't, you know what I mean? Or are even able to predict what will hit and what doesn't. So it's kind of this system where everything kind of needs to be working together in a way that wasn't necessarily true 10 years ago, 5 years ago.
And then just link that to Depop, because Depop is a platform which I want you to explain to our listener what is actually Depop. But Depop now is all about the creators. Is all about is actually, at my view, seen from the outside, it's all about the content that creators are creating and then reselling. But tell us a little bit about like what is Depop, what is Depop is here for, and how creators are actually driving Depop.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you the sort of, the boilerplate of like Depop. Yeah. Depop is a community. No, it's we're a peer-to-peer fashion marketplace. No, it's a marketplace where it is peer-to-peer, where people can buy and sell secondhand clothing primarily and accessories. So there's a lot of like functionality in the app that's very much inspired by and driven from and derives from social media platforms. Yeah. It's kind of like native to that idea or to how people kind of engage with that. We have around 43 million users globally.
Wow.
Kind of, I think, a broader age demographic than people really necessarily associate us with, because historically we were super Gen Z. We're getting to the point where we're really reaching an older audience as well, and hopefully can continue to reach, Gen Alpha, whoever they may
whoever
be
this coming
as the
next.
time comes.
Yes.
Yeah. But it is predicated on this idea that like whatever you want, there's something, someone who's either buying or willing to buy or sell it on Depop. Whatever your style is, that idea of how you can kind of express yourself through your clothes. And also there's a big like inspiration point to it as well, in terms of people searching for things that are interesting to them, to get inspired, that maybe they see outside of Depop and bring it into the app, or vice versa. I think also there's obviously this, I think, idea that's been gaining more and more ground in the public consciousness that our current system of fashion consumption is really harmful.
Yeah.
And the impact is tremendous with fast fashion and just this idea of constant newness. That has taken hold culturally. I like to think that Depop played a part in it, but I think it's also just generally speaking a consciousness
100%.
of how wasteful we can be. So that idea of secondhand fashion, of extending the life of clothing, of making better purchases so things will last longer, whether it's because you want to wear it forever or because the value of how it's constructed and made will mean that you can resell it to someone else when you're done with it, and maybe not recoup the full investment, but it will retain some value.
There's some value.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, like, because Depop's kind of being a pioneer on that, because like we are talking much more now about secondhand fashion and about being sustainable much more in the past, I would say 2-3 years. But you guys has been talking about that since the launch of Depop. So it's kind of like you're much more ahead of the game when it comes to understand the importance of circular fashion.
Yeah, I think so. I think also, our founder, Simon, he didn't set out to be like, I'm going to be a revolution in secondhand fashion.
Right.
It was, for him, it was just, this was a place where he knew a bunch of creative people who had a bunch of stuff that other creative people would want. And that was really the genesis of it. And that ethos is still there. But I think it was that we kind of rose together along with this movement, and we were very willing to accept the role that we could play. We've never tried to like fight the way the culture is moving. We've tried to embrace it, in some ways anticipate it, and in some ways also help create it or give it momentum, but just sort of being
and give it
pliable.
the platform.
Yeah. And this is, so I mean, we've definitely embraced it and then realized that like our role in it is not necessarily, we can't take on fast fashion companies alone. You know what I mean? But what we can do is make shopping secondhand the most appealing that it can be. And that's kind of the way that we think about our mission and the role that we can play to actually drive impact, is like, what are we doing to make sure that people know that it's fun, it's cool for everyone, and it is literally cool for everyone. Do you know what I mean? It's not just people who know how to put together like a wild fashion forward outfit. It can be for people just shopping for their everyday things, people selling 1 or 2 pieces from their own wardrobe. They don't have to be professional sellers. But if you want to, we've also got that for you.
And then like it's amazing like how TikTok played a huge role for Depop growth, right? So like I was just discussing with Andrea, like 4 or 5 years ago, we did a campaign with one of our clients, which is an app that edit video. And there was a collaboration with Depop because there was a lot of creators from Depop using their app to actually edit the content to go to Depop. And then it was all down to a trend on TikTok. So it's kind of like, tell me a little bit about like, the role of social media impact, how Depop became, such an incredible tool for reselling. But TikTok played a real role for that, right?
Yeah, I think it's like, in
an organically way, I'm gonna say. So it was something that happens organic.
I don't think you can engineer that.
No, you can't.
Try as some brands
if you know how to engineer, tell us, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's more this idea that like the influence of people, whatever that means, whether it's like your specific friends or if you're someone who has a huge audience, it's like very porous where those audiences can be. So we've seen people who have built a huge following on Depop from just building their shop and curating what they want to sell and be known for and what they can source. And then that's been the launching pad for them to then become big on other platforms like TikTok or Instagram or whatever. And then we've also obviously seen it go the other way. I think that the part about how we sort of embraced it is like, we haven't tried to push it too hard. We've like, this is very corny, I have to warn you, but one thing that we say sometimes is like, Depop is the stage. Our community is like the actors, if you use that metaphor. So we're there to like ease the barrier of entry, to like make it frictionless, to make sure people understand it, to surface the good inventory. And then we kind of, that's like the spark that lets people then do what they want to do. And then that follows through to our marketing as well. We try to cast all of our campaigns as much as we can from people who are actually, have Depop shops and are Depop users. We certainly like listen to the voice of buyers and sellers in the platform all the time when making those kind of decisions, but we're not out here trying to like push viral trends or like do like TikTok challenges, because that is just, I think, I'm sure it does work sometimes, but it's also such a it's like you're just chasing your tail constantly instead of being like providing a little creative spark to let people then do it on their own.
Yeah. So that means like you guys co-create a lot with the community from Depop.
Yeah.
So you listen, like as you said, like we listen a lot to our buyers and to our sellers to take in consideration what we're gonna do as a mic. So you not use like it's a co-creation collaboration with the users.
Yeah, I mean sometimes it's literally that. Like we'll literally commission people to make content about like a new product feature that we want to tell people about, because they can do it better. They can speak to the audience that we're trying to reach in a much more natural way, and we're not trying to also like hide it. Like it's very clearly we put it on our channels, you know what I mean? It's like very clearly that's what it is. And other times we just look at what people are saying about us, whether it's good or bad, in whatever form it may be, and obviously applying a certain lens to it. Like, is this one specific person's problem? Is it actually the way they say it is, or is this just someone had a great experience or a bad experience, but it's not really applicable to the growth? So it's not like we're getting, wringing our hands over every single thing, but you definitely can get a sense through just being aware of what people are saying about you, of where the movement is going, you know what I mean? And how we can either support that to like amplify it further, or take it as be like, hey, this is a really good consideration that we need to make our products better or our marketing better or whatever.
And do you guys recommend to your sellers what is kind of trend on search? Because I think I read an interview from you where you said that there's some search about like, oh, I saw this Netflix series and I'm looking for, I don't know, like that top that the actor was wearing.
Yes. Yeah.
So how do you use search engineer on the app to actually support your sellers and your buyers to, a certain direction?
Yeah, we do it. There's a lot of people on the app. There's a huge volume of daily searches.
I can't imagine.
For all sorts of things. But what we kind of try to pick the things that are most widely applicable. So like, and some of it is really simple. Like we share stats on our Instagram of like what searches are trending. And it serves like a bunch of different purposes for people who are sellers who might think, oh, I have something like this in my closet that I don't wear, or maybe now's a good time to sell it. Or like the more professional sellers, if you will, who are like, oh, great, I'm going to go source all of this kind of stuff or move those listings to the top of my shop or whatever the case may be. But it also then serves as sort of inspiration too for people who are looking for like, what's my summer wardrobe going to be? Or, what am I going to wear for this party? To kind of let people in a little bit to say like, oh, this is maybe a good idea. Or maybe I don't like this specifically, but it made me think of this and things like that. And then we also highlight like trending items and sellers in the app on just our like, search pages and things like that. Just like to further that engagement, to also like let people know the breadth of what's available, especially for new users or people who don't use it that frequently. Just like ease all those pathways, that UX, make it as sticky as possible. Yeah.
And like just like there's now, as we discussed, there's a lot of like we're talking much more about secondhand fashion, and there's just so many different technologies and app, and now even like proper stores that are reselling. So how do you guys follow I want to say the competitor, but follow where this industry is going, to keep yourselves up to date and making sure that you continue to retain your loyalty customers? Because as you said, you have a huge database, right?
Yeah.
But you still need to look at where the industry is evolving, how it's evolving.
Yeah, I mean, it actually is. It's a shared responsibility. I think it's kind of everyone's responsibility 100%. Internally, to be honest with you. Like, no matter if you're someone who has an internal role on the legal team, or if you're someone who is doing the most kind of community-facing or audience-facing work, consumer-facing. So it touches all things, right? Like, we need to think about like legislation. There's a lot of EU legislation specifically coming around fashion and resale that is relevant to us. It's an opportunity to engage with brands as well. They need to find solutions for stuff that doesn't sell, and they need to find a better solution than sending it to a landfill somewhere else
100%.
or incinerating it, which is shocking what some brands still
It
do
is
that
shocking,
today.
yes.
And then for the consumer, it's also just sort of showing up where they're getting the same information. So, you see people on, if we just use the TikTok example, there are a ton of people talking about how wasteful fast fashion is. And then there's still a lot of people who are still buying from, big brands that are turning over a tremendous, like a shockingly irresponsible amount of product. And how do you kind of mold those two things together to say, here's the problem, here's behavior that's furthering the problem. Why are people still doing this? Oftentimes it's ease and price and just awareness. And so that gives us a little bit of a space to play too, to say like, cool, we just need to make people more aware that this is an option to consume more responsibly. And also like let them know how easy it is and make sure that's real. Like when we're saying it's really easy to list, how is it really easy to list? You know what I mean?
So you have to educate it to ensure that they know better.
Yeah, and then constantly just improve to meet the demands of whoever the audience we're trying to reach is. And at this point, it's I think it's different in different markets. The UK resale has like really penetrated in a deep way. The US is still on like an awareness curve, and so a lot of our job there is because it's just a big market.
It's a big, huge market.
Yeah, I think sometimes bigger than like even me as an American realized until you were actually like looking at the numbers. But yeah, so I mean, we're still talking about, in some ways, there resale versus retail. Whereas here, maybe we're talking more about like what our USP is versus like some of our competitors. Yeah.
And then like what I love about Depop is your editorial concepts that Depop has.
Yeah.
So are you you're very much involved on the content, the storytelling, the editorial?
Yes, we also have we have an in-house creative studio that does a lot of that work. We have an organic social team and a paid social team, and then my team, which is the brand and marketing, and we do work very collaboratively across the board. In addition to people like, we have a CRM team and our paid marketing team, can kind of give us the parameters. So it's a group effort. But yeah, I have something to do with it.
Yeah, no, but I think again, like the content for Depop and editorial, and then the way you guys, talk about Depop and the brand, how you educate and awareness and everything, it is something that it's very unique, and then it's engaged. So is it Depop? Like, what is tell me a little bit about like what's the content editorial? What is the role that plays for Depop? Because you guys are known for the amazing story content.
Yeah, a lot of it is UGC. Like either we see something that we like and we ask people if we can use it and compensate them in that way, or we kind of commission people and say, hey, we want to talk about this. Do you feel like you can talk about this, first of all, like in an authentic way, but and then would you like to? So that's always kind of at the heart of like, let's let people speak for themselves if we can figure out how to do it in a way that makes sense financially for both of us and also like is real. We're not trying to make someone talk about something they don't know anything about. And then there's the other part that's more like our control. And I think what we kind of try to do is this idea that I talk about more and more frequently at work is like a lot of brands will try to be the fire when you can just be the fuel. And so what I mean
I love that.
Thank you. I made it up. But what I mean by that is just like you can't force cultural relevance. You can't tell people we're culturally relevant because of this. But what we can do is create good content that's creative, that explains a little bit about who we are, and there's something in there that sparks some inspiration somewhere else to let other people make content. So we're basically like, you could look at it as we're the fuel, or we're also just kind of getting out of the way of ourselves and just trying to spread our message in the most engaging and like interesting way, and then letting other people do what they will with it. So those people are defining our cultural relevance, our audience, our users, our community, and not us. I just think the consumer is too savvy and they don't want to be marketed to.
And they are getting more and more savvy.
They know what's up. They know when something is like not real. And there's all this stuff, especially on TikTok, which in some ways is kind of like lawless as a platform. Like you see this stuff like that term astroturfing, where you like, which is the response to grassroots kind of stuff, where you like pay people pay creators, I guess, to make it look like it's their organic content, and then you just boost it. Like, you know what that is already. If you get 3 videos in a row with the same script, yeah, it's like, give me a break. And also there's a dissonance between these people are so excited about something that nobody else is talking about. You know what I mean?
It's not as organic,
It doesn't
not authentic.
feel.
Is a TikTok shop something that you guys are typing into it, or has it any impact on Depop?
I'm sure it has some impact in terms of like where people are spending their attention and wallet. We're not actively on it. We're an e-commerce platform ourselves. You know what I mean? So like to stretch ourselves out that way would see, and like you, I don't know. We've talked a lot about this as various opportunities come up.
Yeah.
And there's some that are more appealing because you're actually just you're sending people back to the app, and then there's others where they keep everything in that. And it's like it's so many steps removed from what we actually do that I think we'd have to kind of spend a lot of time thinking about how that would work as opposed to just making our own app experience
and I love that because everyone is talking about TikTok Shop, right?
I mean, it's you got the audience there for sure.
It's getting audience, but I think like it's not just because everyone is talking about that you need to jump into TikTok Shop without having, understanding if you can be at the TikTok Shop, right? Because I think there's a lot of, as an agency, we have a lot of brands that come to us and say, oh my God, we need to be on TikTok Shop. Like, why do you need to be in TikTok Shop? Let's understand first, like, what will be the role of TikTok Shop for your brand? It's just like, let's understand how it works. Let's understand like who is the audience that actually buy on TikTok Shop. Because sometimes brands they tend to see a trend and then feel that the need of being there straight away. I think is the opposite.
I would love to. I'm going to look in the camera. Relieve yourselves of the burden of being first. Just focus on being good. You know what I mean? I think there's the days of like all this new tech and social media is like brand new and there's a new platform. First of all, like we haven't really seen a new platform hit in any significant way since TikTok, if we're being honest. And also a lot of like YouTube is really the best and most clear example of even a platform that's like jumped generations. You know what I mean? Like, let's be real. Facebook is not what Facebook used to be in terms of the audience, and that affects its relevance. So you're spending all this time and energy to focus on like getting something there. It feels to me, and I say this with love, it feels like that's when you're marketing to other marketers.
It's so true.
And not to your community. Like, can you think of a time when you've seen something that a brand, some new tech or some new platform that a brand jumped into first, and you thought like, wow, that's really a brand for me because they got there early. You know what I mean? It's attention.
It's attention.
I mean, and if it makes sense, then sure. But if this is like the solution you've been waiting for, then by all means jump in. But if you're just doing something to do it early, like I don't think that has the cachet that maybe it once did.
No, 100%. And I think it's sometimes when the brands wants to jump into it, it's just down the line. It's just like, oh, the return of investment is just known.
What else could you spend your money and time on?
Exactly. It's just like, I agree with you. It's just more about being good and be assertive of where you're investing your time and your money, because it's not just because everyone is going to that direction that means it's going to work for you. And I think TikTok Shop is a great example, because like we're getting a lot of demand and you go like, let's talk about it.
Yeah, I'm sure it's really good for some.
No, I'm sure
brands.
too, but it requires research. It requires understanding, right, rather than just being there just because everyone is.
Because you also have to be committed to then like following through. You know what I mean? Something like that. That's sometimes like a whole different retail setup for people. Or so like, are you prepared to like commit to what it takes to actually see if it's effective? Or is this just like...
I'm a very kind of like, I love the test and learning. I think test and learn is super important. But even when you go to test and learn something quickly, it has to have to think through it before even you're trying to test and learn.
Yeah. And even that requires like such discipline. Do you know what I mean? Because like especially in the world of brand, like there's a long tail to some of this stuff.
It's a long
and you've got to give it time. And maybe you don't put all your money into something, but then like you start out small and kind of build. I hate that this sounds like such a tech person, but like you look for the green shoots. You know what I mean? You look for the little signs that it's working, and don't try to overanalyze. And like we're guilty of this, as so many other companies are. We look for like the clearest answer oftentimes of like, this is specifically what worked and why it didn't. And I think accepting that you don't necessarily know, and what is the risk you're willing to accept for that. It's something you need to continually like check yourself on. Like, what does our gut feeling say? What are the results that we can see at least say? Is it like directionally good? Do we not know yet? are we willing to take a punt on it and just like keep pushing?
Keep pushing. And then, like you said, gut feeling versus data, right? So,
Oh man,
because
story of my life.
I was just like, because there's a lot of things that we can go through feelings and understanding based on what you're seeing on the surface.
Yeah.
But then we cannot avoid data. So, and then especially you guys, your tech platform.
Oh, we are.
Yes, you know, we cannot run away from that too. So how data, I don't want to use the word dictate, but I'm going to use, so how data dictate the direction of your content or your marketing strategy and everything that Depop does.
It is, I mean, there's certain parts of the business where it's very cut and dry. You do this, you get this, you A/B test something, we feel good about it, keep it moving. There's other parts, which is oftentimes where like me and my team sit and my closest colleagues, where there's parts of it that are like that, and then other parts that are completely divorced from any of that. Whether it's because we just haven't figured out a way that we feel comfortable doing it, or like no one has. And so you look at, you know, we try to balance it out and say like, this is what we feel confident in. And maybe you like, some of the ways that we've done it is we've tested and learned on specific channels where there's like a clear attribution link to when we put this much money and this much time in something, we hit this much frequency. I'm talking about like obviously digital marketing channel. And then we can see this is the ROI. We've agreed on what's an acceptable threshold. And then you can invest more and see how that goes, and then invest more until we finally reach this feeling of like somewhat, okay, cool, this is like mature. You know, we know how to do this, we know how to do it. And maybe and in the past, what that's allowed us to do is then say, we're going to try to do that with another channel. We don't always have the time to, in like a very competitive landscape, to do that one by one.
Yeah.
So then we sometimes look at like, okay, this general mix of things makes us feel better. It's not the easiest to sell internally. I don't think that's a unique problem to us at all.
No, it's definitely not.
And then there's the other things that just say like, let's look at everything we've done and everything that we feel confident in. Does that give us confidence to then spend somewhere else where we don't have that, because we know we've got this and we know what we can do with this? Let's play over here. I think we've had like some real success and some real confidence building internally in that. And other things feel like a little bit of a bridge too far, where you have to try to like, basically we just work with what we have, you know what I mean? And so there's ways to also slip in some other elements that we can sort of then use as a proof point. So like we had, you know, we've had some really great success with YouTube, for example. It's great to drive that like consideration, you know?
And YouTube is great for that.
Great. And we can reach so many people, and it's incredible, like the view through rates that we get for the whole ad on there. And so we started out super functional, get on Depop, sell your clothes or buy your clothes. This is what's here, done, 20-second spot. And then we've kind of built out more storytelling from there. Still, like there's a certain amount of utility. You're trying to get a message. You've got this window to do it. You know, you got to mention the brand in the first 5 seconds. You have to have a call to action, blah, blah, blah. But like, what can we do to play in that space from more of the brand building stuff? So like we've added in, like we started licensing recognizable music.
Oh,
like,
that's cool.
And I know that
added like element of
it's
music.
Expensive to license songs that are current or like relevant, but because we have that confidence, we can do that, and then we can say, hey, this is like a good proof point that investing in this part of something is actually worth it, because maybe like the performance, and we have seen in some instances, I'm thinking about a specific one we did in the US with a Doja Cat song where like it performed better. You know what I mean? Like the view through rate was better. The engagement was better.
Because you're connecting with people through emotion, through the music, is not just the brand itself. So I think there's element of,
and it's working with what we feel comfortable with collectively, right? Like we know we've got this, and so let's like seek out those opportunities to work with what we have. That also just there's always like the brand marketers' pipe dreams of like doing something completely crazy that we know will drive awareness, or we know will do something, but there's no way to prove it, and it's a big swing. It's going to cost millions of dollars or pounds or whatever. Fine. That's not always, we're not doing a creative exercise here. We work for a business. So we have to kind of like be real about that too, but find those little pathways to build up that case, I think is a good tactic that's taken us quite far.
And then like, do you guys like we talk a lot about phygital, right? So because it's, like online versus offline, and how to bring your community to more real experience. So tell me a lot, how is Depop looking into it? Because I know you guys do, but do you feel that your community is more and more wanting to have more physical experience rather than just be on the app?
Yes, for sure. I mean, that's like really consistent with what we hear. And we've heard that for a long time. Obviously, we had to take a break during the pandemic like everybody else. And it took us a minute to kind of like get back in that mindset of like, oh, this did work really well for us before. We've started doing it more and more frequently, specifically in London and then in the US. In New York, we just did a month-long kind of like blitz of marketing in June. And it was great. There was all the traditional stuff of like, we did audio ads that were targeted to there. We did a big out of home, which we haven't really done to that degree.
I saw it. It looks super cool.
It was fun. Yeah, it was really cool. We cast like local New Yorkers in it, which was great. And then we did like, I think we did a total of 5 IRL events, and I think it was easier to like tell that story in the context of all the other stuff that we were doing. I think if we had proposed, or if like my team had proposed doing 5 IRL events without any of that other stuff supporting it, I would have said like, this is not really how we should be thinking about it. But in the marketing mix, I think it can be really powerful.
It makes sense. And then partnerships and collabs. Is it something that, how do you pick and choose collabs? And is this partnership something that, drives awareness and engagement for Depop?
Yeah, it definitely does drive awareness. I think that's another one where like we have some challenges with how we hone in on like the specifics of it. I don't think we really can, or anyone really can. Also, there's just a practical thing about like, we've got our channels where we're promoting it that we can see how they do. And then this other company that we're partnering with, this other brand, has theirs, and they're not going to share all of that with us, realistically.
It's realistic.
And also, like, we're part of a publicly traded company. We can't share all of it with them. Yeah. But we have a certain faith that in both what we've done and then in the potential to continue to do more. The way that I don't think that we have like a rigorous like set of criteria.
Playbook.
Yeah, because it's different every time. And like sometimes it is literally just about timing. What do we have capacity for? Does the timing work out with everything else we have planned? Is a brand going to actually be able to like move on something, like a brand partner? Because it can be, I think what I would say is like, we know how many like internal stakeholders we have, double that at least, and then triple it if you're also working with like a creative agency that the brand partner works with. So all of that adds time and like complexity. So yeah, I mean, we just try to like, assess it based on like the immediate needs and what is collectively like, what is it building toward?
Being a technology platform as Depop, so of course we cannot avoid talk about AI, right?
Oh yeah.
But not necessarily me, because people has like this, idea and perception that because everyone is talking about AI, everyone should be already executing and using AI, but it's not as practical as it sounds. So how does Depop are navigating the world of the AI in terms of process, automation, creative content?
Yeah,
how you guys are working that direction?
It's really interesting because it does feel like however long ago, and not that long ago.
Yeah, not that long.
It's become a part of so many conversations, in the sense where before it wasn't. It was limited to a certain set of things. So it's one that we're definitely navigating. There's some that are. I think our kind of main point of view is you can't just apply it to everything. You have to have a reason, and it has to solve something. So there's some like really practical ways that we use it. So like we have some AI powered listings. So when someone comes on and they want to sell something, you can upload your photos, and we have this AI built in where it can generate the description of your item.
That's amazing.
And honestly, it cuts down on listing time
oh my God,
so much. I mean, I use it when I list on there, and it's good. You know what I mean? It's actually like really strong. And it, if you have a picture of the tag, it can do the brand. It can fill out the other fields like the brand.
Because it's the most time consuming. The thing is to write.
It's the most time consuming thing, and I think for some people that's the barrier of entry, where they look at it and they're like, oh, I don't want to do this. It's not in reality, it's not always that long if you have that kind of like skill set.
Yeah.
But when people don't, this is that's been a real tool. People really like it. It definitely helps power our search and things like that. And we also, because we are a company that cares a lot about sustainability and responsibility in terms of like what our impact is, we're in the midst of assessing what that looks like for the future if we were to rely on AI more, because it can be really wasteful of resources.
100%.
And we want to make sure that we're not just like going whole hog into this until we understand better what what we do to make sure that we're wielding that responsibly from that sustainability perspective as well. I'm less convinced about it as like a creative solution for everything. And maybe this is a little bit naive, and maybe I'll like play this clip back in 5 years and be like, well, I'm irrelevant. But I think it's like, I think people just try to apply it to everything instead of thinking about what it can be used for, basically in the best possible way. I've already seen instances of, thankfully not at Depop, but at companies that we work with, where like you'll get an email about something and I'm just like, what is this person trying to say? And it's because they used ChatGPT or something and didn't even proofread it. And I'm sure people use it all the time and don't run into that, but like it just struck me as like we've already reached this thing where it was a very simple email that this person sent, where they made it seem like the impact of something we had been working on together was bad because it was worded in such a crazy way, when it actually was the most successful version of that we'd ever done. And someone, thankfully, because I was still like, it didn't even occur to me that this is a product of that, so I was kind of rereading it.
Especially you being a writer before, so you can kind of like
and I also realized
that's very easier.
And let's be real too, that has something to do with my like aversion to it in certain ways that it's been applied, is because I'm just like, this is crazy. But it's also a tool. Like if, English isn't your first language, or if it's meeting notes are really interesting, and we sometimes think we have like, certain things that we use in that way. I just don't think we can say like, cool, now we're never going to do this, pay attention again, or we're going to be on a video call and we can be typing on the side because Gemini or whatever is doing it. Because also like, it's not perfect.
It's not far from perfect. All. It's far from
If it can be a tool to support you instead of to replace you, then that's, I think, the thing that will actually take us a lot further. If it can like help accelerate things or make things more efficient. But when it starts to get into like, I'm going to give you a great brand campaign idea.
No.
You can't, because you're also crowdsourcing. The whole thing is based on it's taking things that other people have done.
You need the human, brain in order to, to prompt the AI to actually be able to create something amazing. Yeah. But a lot of people talk about scalability in terms of content. Like if being on the agency side, there's a lot of agencies out there that what they do is create content for brands, right? So now brands are cutting that middleman agency because they see as AI as a less expensive tool to scale and create content. As a Depop, as a platform where we talk about content, and content is what actually drive a lot of what Depop is today.
Yeah.
But as you said, there's a lot of UGC and content from creators that you guys repost and use and engage.
Yeah.
But do you see that AI can help brands in terms of scalability of having more content out there?
I'm sure in some specific ways it probably can. I mean, we think about this even in we're fortunate because a lot of outside of like the real campaign work, a lot of the content that we use on a day-to-day basis comes from our community. They're taking photos of their clothes, they're making social content, and so if as long as we're like compensating for that and getting the right usage rates, it's there. But like we've had conversations, and I think we're still kind of exploring the idea of like, there's a lot of spaces in app where we want to keep things fresh, and we want to like make sure the image that we use for certain categories of like these are shoes and things like that. It would be great if that could be tailored. The listing's already tailored to this specific user's experience, but what about those images? Could that be something that we can refresh more consistently because it's not manual? That to me is not a creative compromise, because it's about finding those things, surfacing them, and we're obviously programming the AI to find what we would want, and you can say the certain type of image that you want is there. I don't know how that is in practice. We're just kind of looking at it right now, but I think the general idea is like, is it a tool to replace something that's time consuming to help you scale, or is it a tool to create the creativity behind it? And that I don't think is the right path.
Yeah.
But if the stuff is there and it's what you would be using, and you're just using it to surface it and replace things more quickly than a human team could, that to me, that's like an extension of the personalization work that we're already doing that's AI powered. So that's not as concerning in principle, at least.
It's just because sometimes I wonder, because like we all like, it's just so much content, right? So you go to platform and like scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. It depends on what you're looking for. Algorithm, take you to one specific theme for weeks, and it's just like, I was just searching that for a day, like stop showing me this type of content. But now if people are talking about scalability on having more content, how we actually going to get an attention, because it's just more and more content. And then I go back to the, the consumer's craving for more ROL experience, because sometimes you get tired of scrolling because it's just so much content. And then the question that I do to myself and when I brainstorm with my team, if AI is here to make brands and influencers to create more content, where this is going to end up, because sometimes I get tired.
Yeah, and I mean the other thing is like we're already all like slaves to the algorithm of whatever platform we're on.
100%.
So there's only so much that we can even do in response to that. It doesn't mean that it's not achievable. It means that you have to like give people the reason to make stuff about you. And that can be true if they're using AI or if they're doing it themselves, as opposed to trying to like flood the platform with your own stuff. Like that's not going to work, and that already doesn't work even without the really widespread adoption of AI on like a content creation point of view.
No, 100%. And then cultural relevance, because I think you mentioned that at the beginning, like how to force cultural relevance, but especially the, as you say, like the Gen Zers and then the generation that's coming after, we cannot run away of, like, they're looking for, engaging with brands that has that cultural relevance and the sustainability and ethical resources and et cetera, et cetera. And Depop being a global brand is in US and London. So when it comes to create cultural relevance, marketing, activations, how do you do it? What do you look it for?
Yeah, I think first of all, I think the mindset has to be earning it and not buying it, chasing it, deserving it,
or appropriating it.
Certainly. So that's kind of a base level. I think there's also something, years ago, this woman who I used to work with, who came from one of the big consultancies, she was building out her team and she felt like they didn't have a sense of what the cultural landscape outside of that, because it's a little harder to, you can't, it's not exactly data driven in the same way that maybe understanding like the media landscape might be. And she asked me, could you recommend 4 websites or podcasts or whatever that my team can look at every week to become cultural experts? And my answer was like, and I appreciate that her heart was in the right place. But my answer was like, no.
No, that's what would be my answer
You
too.
can't. It's impossible. No one can. You would get a fraction of what is there. And I think like the idea of being kind of like chronically online is important. Like, but ultimately what that means is you have to really be immersed in where your audience is and where they're getting their information. As like a base level responsibility of, I think personally, of anyone who works at a company that has a target audience, which is every company essentially. You do need, I think it's all of our responsibility, because it's not even like with the sheer volume of content like you were talking about, there's like memes on top of memes that come from memes that reference a Tumblr comment from 5 years ago. That is like, I just keep thinking about this one from years ago that was like a meme that was based on a snippet of a Russian cereal commercial, like the jingle.
I haven't seen
and I'm like, how do you explain that to someone unless you were there? You know what I mean? Unless you saw it happen. But you can't, no one person can be responsible for all of that, for understanding all of the minutia of every single thing when it moves so quickly. But what you do get from being online is a sense of like, how do you speak the language, or what's the sensibility that inspires these things? That informs like the language that people use, the way they talk about things. So you get a general sense that will help guide your instincts in terms of like what is an area where we can play in as a brand versus what is just like internet slop. You know what I mean? Or what is just something that's like, this is just not for us because it's so weird or so out there or so specific. You know what I mean? So there's that element of it too. And then I do think what I said earlier about like thinking about opening the doors, like you need to give people an invitation to engage with your brand
100%,
and to find what it is for them and for their community that is that creative spark that drives that relevance, as opposed to forcing it upon them. Because what is your natural response if someone tells you how to think or what's important is to either say no or be really skeptical about it. And that's like just human behavior that I think sometimes gets lost. Like that's not a profound idea that people don't be like to be told what to do.
Absolutely. And then like I was discussing with one of our clients. They're entering Brazil, and they were like, oh, we need to enter Brazil, but the way they're looking to open the shops there was much more bringing their view of Brazil rather than understand actually what is the community of Brazil would be expecting from this brand when they enter Brazil. And then it's so important. It's just like understand, because that community will have to accept your brand first of all, right? Because if you don't enter the market, but looking into what is actually cultural relevance for that community, but making sure that the way it's very authentic, organic, you're not forcing something just to get the attention, because the consumers are much more savvy nowadays.
And you talked about data before, like this is not the most interesting, but understanding your audience, like do use audience segmentation, like talk to them, and also don't be afraid to talk to them about marketing specifically. I think there's the stuff about building personas that a lot of like outside research agencies do is really useful, because you get a full picture. Where does this person shop? Where do they go on vacation? That's their favorite celebrity? What music do they listen to? How many people are in their family? All that kind of stuff. The whole organization needs that, not just marketing. 100%. But like, if we believe that people are more savvy about marketing today, why would we not also believe that we can ask them about how they want to be marketed too? This idea that like, you tell us who you are and we'll tell you what's relevant to you. Like,
exactly, because they will make you, they will break or make you, right?
Yeah.
This is just, at the end of the day, it's your consumer that is going to dictate how successful a brand will be, because it has to be. Like I've been talking about the word authentic, but it's true. Like, how can you run away from the word of being authentic?
You can't.
They're just saying to me, Maira, stop talking. All right. So future, where do you see the secondhand fashion going, evolving? Not just Depop. I'm talking about the whole industry. If you have to say like 3 things that you think that industry will go in the future, what that will be?
I think it will continue to grow. And I think it will continue to grow across demographics and age, gender, like all of that kind of stuff. Because I think people it's gaining that momentum, and it's outpacing new customers for retail. So that's definitely one. I think more and more brands will take responsibility for the clothes they create. And will not necessarily forget about them when they leave the store or the warehouse or whatever. Whether that means their own resale platforms or just working more closely with existing ones. It's already happening, and I think it will continue to do so. And I think the other trend is just like, it's not going to be something that people even call out as like something anymore. Like, it's just going to be it's going to be natural behavior, which is different than it growing, in the sense of like, this just becomes the reflex. It's secondhand first is, I guess, what I'm trying to say, as opposed to retail first. I really do think that is the momentum that it's going for a lot of people.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers
crossed.
Because
that would be a better word if everyone starts thinking like that. But talking about like you said, like, it's going to be more of a natural for a consumer. But I think if for brands, the way they will have to play as well will have to be natural as well.
Yeah.
Because I see a lot of like, luxury retailers or department stores where, because they see that, oh my God, we needed to show our customers that we do have a secondhand inside the shop.
Yeah.
But doesn't feel natural. It's just because
it's like 4 pieces.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think it's just like, if you wanted to play that responsible role, you have to be natural. You have to be doing this with an intention, not just.
I could talk about it for hours, because even the quality of some clothes, it's going down, and so like, it's more. Is it more better is it better for the consumer to buy something from the 90s when it was made better?
So true.
Yeah. So we'll see.
So true.
Yeah.
Steve, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was an amazing conversation, and I love to hear like more about Depop, and understanding more how you guys where you're going, and your view for marketing, and the way you guys create this amazing platform. As I said, Depop is one of the pioneers, right? And I think you guys continue to very much lead the way. And fingers crossed that the future is going to become more and more Depop.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
No, you're welcome. So thank you so much for everyone that's listening to our podcast today. I hope you have enjoyed our conversation. If you're not following us yet, you make sure you do on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and Amazon. And I see you guys on our next episode. And thank you again, Steve, for your time and for being here with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.